So, Kevin, at the break, you had basically walked us up to the innovation, and I'm using air quotes, unfortunately for radio, of private corporations buying existing failing liberal arts colleges, using the accreditation that came with that college. Basically, I imagine keeping that college alive just so that it could basically be I guess, a honeypot for accreditation, and then using that brand and that imprimatur to create a much larger business, an online business that catered to students across the country. And that accreditation allowed for these students to qualify for government loans, or at least was a requisite for them to qualify for government loans, which ended up funding these growing for-profit universities. Give us a sense today, and where it's been traditionally, what is the amount of revenue that these for-profit colleges rely on U.S. government loans for?
I mean, it can, at its height, I think the University of Phoenix was getting over $1 billion a year coming in from federal loans. Now, as you mentioned, there was really kind of a bubble in the mid-aughts, and then the Obama administration worked very hard to crack down on abuses in the for-profit college industry. It was basically a huge gold rush. They were signing up anyone they could who could bring in federal loans. A lot of students didn't graduate. A lot of students got a bad education. They couldn't pay their loans back. So the combination of all that reputational damage and the regulatory crackdown really did have a major effect on the industry, where a lot of the for-profit colleges, most of which still exist, although many of them have gone bankrupt. You mentioned ICT, which had been around a long time, and they went bankrupt just last year. So at the height, it was in the billions of dollars, but even today, it can still be in the hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
And we should say that I've had occasion to look at funds that bundle for-profit colleges, and you can follow the graph. It's like a slow slope downward towards the end of the Obama administration, and literally the day after Donald Trump is elected, these stocks shot up with a trajectory that you would see basically only with spaceships. They went straight up. But that is one section of what you touch on in the piece. But the other section is sort of, in some ways, I don't know if it's more disturbing, but it seems to be somewhat problematic, is that now we have the phenomena of where corporations would go in and buy a failing liberal arts institution to use its accreditation. Now we seem to have those nonprofit institutions leveraging their accreditation and their reputations to build on the other part of sort of like the for-profit model.
Yeah, so a lot of the implosion of the for-profit industry put a lot of people out of work, and what those people were mostly good at was getting students to sign up. It was really the marketing and the recruiting that they were very aggressive about. They were very successful in figuring out how to take out ads on Google and Facebook and set up call centers where they would call you right away and pressure tactics and all those things. What many of them then did was go to work in this new industry that basically sits behind the scenes and partners with existing colleges, the more famous, the better, to create very expensive online programs. So, for example, if you were to go to get an online MBA at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, you're actually giving most of your money not to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. You're giving most of your money, and it runs about $120,000, all of which can be financed through federal loans. You're giving most of your money to a company called 2U, which is actually publicly traded on the NASDAQ, has a market cap of over $5 billion right now, and partners with Harvard, USC, Yale, Georgetown, NYU, like a lot of very, very well-known institutions, to create online master's degrees that are branded as the public or nonprofit institution. And the faculty are very much involved. I don't want to go too far on this, but most of the money is going to the company working in the background.
And unlike, I mean, one would presume, well, okay, it's Harvard, it's UNC or wherever whatever the it's a brand name. They're going to protect their brand, but there's a series of factors that make it much harder to hold these institutions to account versus undergraduate, right? Because we're not talking about undergraduate right now. We're talking about graduate programs, unlike those for-profit, which are undergraduate. These are graduate programs, and apparently there is not the same transparency as to how these programs, how exclusive these programs are, how they are run. None of the factors that are there in what we call, I guess, the higher education market, none of those factors are there at all, are there?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think this is in some ways two different kind of rackets coming together, and so you've got the for-profit racket on the one hand and the recruitment and the pressure tactics and all that. These elite institutions had already figured out how to monetize their brand names through the very rapid expansion of graduate degrees, particularly master's degrees, which are essentially unregulated. Any well-known university that's accredited can create a new master's degree in more or less anything it wants to. They could easily put together a master's degree in podcasting if they wanted to and charge $50,000 a year in tuition. No one would tell them they couldn't. For all I know, it probably already exists.
Well, let me just say available if someone's looking for someone for me to do that. But go ahead.
Yeah, you're in the wrong line of work. You need to go find your local university and see if they can kind of get this whole thing going. But and so, with an undergraduate degree, what the average SAT score, the percent of students who apply, who are admitted. You have sort of some sense of how selective they are, how much money they spend, what kind of students are coming in, what kind of students are coming out, job placement rates, things like that. It's all a black box on the graduate side of things, particularly for master's degrees. For law school and medical school, those are things that are sort of done in partnership with the professions. And even PhD programs are kind of done in partnership with the profession of scholars. Master's programs are just selling degrees that have value in the labor market for market prices.
Theoretically.
There's no regulation. There's no transparency.
Theoretically have value in the. All right. Well, we just have a minute left here. So the gist of this is, and I really think people should read the piece to get an understanding of this dynamic, is that it seems that the system is broken, that it is driving up prices. There is not the proper constraints on making sure that an education consumer, I guess, is getting the value that should be there. And we are, as a society, encouraging, what is maybe fraud's too strong of a word, but a bit of a scam with just 30 seconds left. I mean, is that a fair assessment that we need to look at that and figure out that dynamic?
If you look at the financial documents these companies put out, what you see is that for every dollar that comes in, only 15 cents is spent on instruction.
Wow.
The other 85 cents is basically on administrative costs, advertising, and about a 45% profit margin split between the company and the university. So the universities that you think are really public-minded institutions are more and more just acting like businesses trying to get as much of your money as they can.
Wow. Shocking. Kevin Carey, thanks so much. We will put a link to your piece at the Ring of Fire Radio website. Thanks so much.